So, welcome to Exodus 19, a nation married to Yah, with your host, Richard Massey. I pray that you guys are having an awesome day, well, awesome Sabbath. And I pray that whatever you and your family are going through, that Yah gives you the strength to go through it. So, today I wanted to read Hebrews 11. And I wanted to see, because I see that Hebrews 11 supports Genesis 12, talking about commandment, covenant. All the way deep into the New Testament, this book is validating Genesis 12. And I am really happy that now I'm getting a better understanding in Yah's word regarding what he wants. Now I just have to catch up in years and surpass all the other and old doctrine that I had accepted into my life, and now start living and renewing my mind with Genesis 12 covenant commandment. So we're in Hebrews 11. Let's get started. Okay. Hebrews 11:1. And belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. For by this the elders obtained witness. By belief we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what was invisible. By belief we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what is invisible, what is visible. By belief, Hebel offered to Elohim a greater slaughter offered than Yakin, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous. Elohim witnessed of his gifts, and through it, having died, he still speaks. By belief, Hanok was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because Elohim had translated him. For before his translation, he obtained witness that he pleased Elohim. So, should we go over that for a little bit? One, in belief is the substance of what is expected. Belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. And it talks about Abraham and how Yah and Abraham had a conversation in Genesis 12. And I forget where in the Bible, but it says that Abraham never saw the promise. He just believed in starting it. Like that was just as important as seeing it. Somebody had to start it, even though they weren't going to see the actual manifestations of it. It says, for by this the elders obtained witness. By belief, we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what was visible. 6, but without belief, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those that earnestly seek him. How do we earnestly seek Elohim? How do we have belief in him? What are we believing in? Genesis 12, the covenant, how to treat your neighbor, how to love Yah, how to give up the things that your flesh is desiring, to please Elohim. This is how we show our belief in him, because without it, it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. Seeking, what do you want me to do in this situation here? Because I know my flesh is telling me this. But what does your word say in regard to how I feel? Me and my wife are not talking, and I don't want to talk to her for a couple more days. But what does your word say in regards to me and my wife? Me and my neighbor can't stand each other. And I would rather put up a wall, build a wall, and shut him out of my life. But what does your word say in regards to my neighbor? And then when I find out what your word says in regards to my neighbor, I have to apply that word to my life and change. Not worrying about what his response to me is going to be. I have to do my part. 11:7. It says, by belief, Noah, having been warned of what was yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark to save his house, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteous, which is according to belief. So by belief, Noah, having been warned of what was yet unseen, just like us today, we've been warned what is yet unseen. What are we doing about it? We're chalking it up as coincidence, global warming, rumors of wars, nations going against nations, diseases. These are things that we've been warned about, even though they were at the time unseen. But Noah having a fear, he prepared the ark to save his house. Are we preparing the ark to save our house? Are we trying to teach Yah's word so that our families and our friends and neighbors can understand what Yah wants from us to put us in the ark of safety? It says, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness, which is according to belief. He turned his back on what the world was doing. Right? He followed Yah. He turned his back on what the world was doing. He turned his back on what his flesh wanted to do. He's following Yah. 8. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. Yah said, I'm going to send you to a place that I will show you. Abraham had no idea how far or where Yah was sending him. He just started walking until he came to the place. He had no desire. Like now in my walk, in this walk I have no desire where I'm going. I don't know if my podcast is going to make it. I don't know if my podcast is going to get extremely successful. But I'm doing it because I believe in Yah. I believe that Yah is giving me this voice to try to build a platform, to show and to teach and to point out scripture that I had no knowledge of at one point. I believe that he is using me to do this podcast. I really do. But I'm believing that he's telling me to tell my family, even though I might see a facial expression that shows that that's not what they want to hear. It's my job to be the watchman, to be the whistleblower. 8. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Yashet and Yahokut. These names get me. The heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking for the city having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim, Yetshik, and Ya'akor. 11. By belief also, Sarah herself was unable to conceive seed, And she bore a child when she was past the normal age because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. See, these are commandment covenants. By belief, also, Sarah herself wasn't able to conceive seed. She was well past childbearing years. And she bore a child when she was past the normal age because she deemed him trustworthy. Who did she deem trustworthy? Elohim. Why? Because he simply said it. This is all in Genesis, who had promised. This is Hebrews 11 talking about people in Genesis. Why is that? Why are they talking about people in Genesis? Because we have to build up this covenant commandment. This is very important. It's not about the law, especially for us since Yeshua came and died on the cross for us. We go back to the covenant commandment. 12. And so from one, and him as good as dead, were born as numerous as the stars of the heaven, and countless as the sand, which is by the seashore. That was another promise that he gave Abraham if he followed his commandment covenant. There was a promise concerning him and keeping his focus on doing what Yah said, right? In belief, all these died, not having received the promise. They didn't enter into his rest. They never received it because they didn't believe, because they didn't do it. But seeing them from a distance, welcome and embrace them and confess that they are aliens and strangers on earth. For those who speak this way, make it clear that they believe a fatherland. And yet, if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. So this has to be talking about Mizraim, right? Or Egypt, right? Because while they were in the wilderness, it says, for those who spake this way, make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet, if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, Mizraim, Egypt, they would have had the chance to return to the promised land, right? Even though technically they didn't get there yet. 16, but now they long for a better place, that is, a heavenly. Therefore, Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. By belief, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promise offered up his only brought forth son. Why? Because when Yah asked him to sacrifice his son, he didn't say, well, it took me all this time to get him through your promise, and now you're asking me to give him up. He simply said, let's go. We're going to go up and we're going to sacrifice him. His belief was unseen, but he trusted Yah. He simply trusted Yah at his word. He knew that Yah had promised him great things through Isaac. And now Yah is asking him to sacrifice Isaac. And he could say to himself, well, how is Yah going to use Isaac if he has me sacrifice him? Abraham simply said, that is not my problem. The great promiser who promised me Isaac, who finally gave me Isaac, who is now telling me to sacrifice Isaac. I don't care how he makes it happen in the end. Right now, I have to do what he's telling me to do, and that is sacrifice Isaac. And that's what we're going to do. It says, of whom it was said, in Isaac, your seed shall be called. So Yah said to Abraham, now you're telling me to sacrifice him. But I don't care what you have to do to make that promise in verse 18 come about. You're telling me to sacrifice him now? I'm going to do it. Let your will be done and your promise to be kept. He said, reckoning that Elohim was able to rise, see, even from the dead, from which he received him back as a type. By belief, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning that which was to come. They didn't see it, but they trusted, they believed it. This is all Genesis that they're talking about. All these people, characters are from Genesis, and we're in Hebrews 11. It says, by belief, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons of Joseph and did reverence on the top of his staff. By belief, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the outgoing of the children of Israel and gave orders concerning his bones. Because he knew they were going somewhere, because he believed. He had conversation with Elohim, who told him so. We're in verse 22, and all this is talking about Genesis, all the characters in Genesis, right? 23, by belief, by faith, Moshe, having been born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a comely child and were not afraid of the sovereign's command or the king's command. By belief, Moshe, having become great, refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. His life could have been way better as the son of a king, of a sovereign. But he said, my God, I'd rather worship you and obey you with a lower life than to be lifted up now and have everything in my power now. I was talking to a friend through text yesterday, and this person was going back and forth with me about Genesis. And the person wanted to know that how did I know that Yah wasn't just giving an order to Adam and Eve and all the people in the first chapters of Genesis as far as population was controlled. Population control was concerned. And they tried to go into quantum theory on me. Well, I don't know quantum theory. So the conversation is not going to be balanced because I'm not speaking from quantum theory. I'm not speaking from science. I'm speaking from the word of God. So if you're saying that, you believe in energy and you believe that that stuff is not necessary to populate and to be fruitful, that he was only talking to them in the early stages of the word and it wasn't applying to us now. I don't know how you get that. Because all throughout at least Genesis, they were populating and bringing forth fruit as far as kids, children, family is concerned. So, a lot of times, I believe that this person wanted to have a discussion based on having kids because this person doesn't have kids and don't want kids. And that person took it like I was trying to come after them. But in that same 30-minute episode, I talked about the Sabbath. I talked about clean and unclean back in Genesis, the episode on Genesis. I talked about clean and unclean animals. I talked about being fruitful. I talked about the Sabbath. Those three things were all in there. And the only thing you came at me about was being fruitful. Just stop right there. But I just said that to say that Moses decided he didn't want to have this great life now. But he wanted to live the way God intended for him to live. And I'm just asking sometime with us. We know Yah don't want us doing a particular thing. But we want to do it anyway because it benefits our life. It brings us more money. Like nobody wants to sit home on the Sabbath. Nobody wants to stay home from Friday to Saturday on the Sabbath when you could be going out and going shopping and going to the ballpark, going out to dance and to eat and to have fun. Nobody wants to do that, right? So instead of you, so what do? You say that that's not necessary, that the law is done away with. But we see that that's before the law. So that's how you justify doing what you do on Friday nights so that you don't have to do it. You say it's done away with. But I'm reading to you and I'm showing you how it needs to be done in order to show Yah that you're entering into his rest. Let's read 24 again. By belief, Moshe, having become great, refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. He didn't want that life, choosing rather to be afflicted with the people of Elohim than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a time, deeming the reproach of Messiah greater riches than the treasures in Mizraim, for he was looking to the reward. He said, choosing rather to be afflicted with the people of Elohim than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time, or sin for a time, deeming the reproach of Messiah greater riches than the treasures of Mizraim, for he was looking to the reward. In belief, he left Mizraim, not fearing the wrath of the sovereign or of the king, for he was steadfast as seeing him who is invisible. He was so desiring to see the one who was invisible. It says, by belief, he performed the Passover. He participated in it when they were in Mizraim for the last night. He performed the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch him. He didn't want Yah to destroy him like Yah destroyed the firstborn. So he participated and he performed the Passover and the sprinkling of blood. By belief, they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, like it was dry. And when the Mizrahites tried it, they were drowned. By belief, the walls of Jericho fell, having been surrounded for 7 days. By belief, Rahab, the whore, did not perish with those who did not believe, having received the spies with peace. Now, this one is in the New Testament. No, this is in the Old Testament. What am I talking about? So this is verse 31. We're still in the Old Testament, this whole chapter so far. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to relate of Gideon and Barak and Shemshan, which is Samson. And this next name is Yiphath. Also Dawid, which is David, and Samuel and the prophets, who through belief overcame reigns, worked righteousness, obtained promise, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became mighty in battle, put foreign armies to flight. These men did all this because they believed, and Yah gave them strength and gave them an answer for what they needed in their times of trouble. Women received back their dead by resurrection, and others were tortured, not accepting release, to obtain a better resurrection. And others had trials of mocking and flogging and more, of chains and imprisonment. Because when you're living for Yah, you're going to see affliction. You're going to see people leave you. You're going to see people turn their backs on you. You're going to feel isolated because people are going to be telling you that what you're saying now is foreign, is not necessary. I can drop all this right now and call all my friends and my family and tell all of them that I no longer believe what I was trying to teach in the last 4 years, and I'm coming back to Christianity. And they will invite me back to church and open up their arms and hug me and kiss me and love me all over again. But because you simply trying to show somebody something different, that's not even different, but it's truth, people will turn their backs on you and not even want to be bothered with you. They were stoned. They were tried. They were sown or sown into. They were slain with the sword. They went about in sheepskin and goatskin, being in need, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in the desert and mountains and caves and the holes of the earth, and having been obtained witness through the belief, all these did not receive a promise. Elohim having provided what is better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. Man, I'm going to tell you something. We haven't even seen affliction yet if we keep on talking covenant commandment. Yah is not, listen, you better notice that when you talk this, you being isolated, that people are not going to want to be around you because you're not talking grace. You better understand that. And that's why, one of the things that I realize is that, even during this podcast and this being a hard saying, there's nobody listening to my podcast. My numbers are very low. But if Yah is giving me the opportunity to put my voice out into the atmosphere for people to one day trip across, and maybe there's somebody that has an ear to hear, then that's who I'm for. Nobody supports you, friends and family, when you're doing this. Number one, because everybody's tired of religion anyway, because they've been bamboozled for so many years of their life. So now what makes you think, Richard, that you have the right way? Who do you think you are that you speak in the right, that you're right? Because I've been listening to people all my life and God has never moved for me. I've been told that God's going to use me. I've been told that, Jesus loved me and I don't have nothing to eat. My job is subpar. Nobody cares about me. I've been used and paying my tithes and shouting and running around the church, and my life is worse. So what makes you think that you have the right answer? So I'm not going to listen to your podcast. I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to give you my time. I'm not going to study with you. But my faith tells me to keep on going to church, even though nothing's changing in my life except the good music. Sometimes I can run around the building and show God how much I love him. And then when I go home, nothing works for me. Because that just means I have to turn my faith up even more. It's not about your faith. It's about appliance and application. Why does the word of God say that you call me Lord, Lord, but you do nothing I say? I tell you, man, all I want, all my desire is to help set some people free. That's all I want. I want you to be set free from the false prophets and from the false doctrines, from the traditions of men in deception, and turn back to the covenant commandment. Study them. See for yourself. Try to do one thing at a time. If Yah gives you the years and the time, try applying it. This is just a reminder that this podcast is on Spotify and Instagram. I'm live on YouTube as well. So don't forget to like my page and to share my page where it applies. Don't forget to hit the notification button. And don't forget to subscribe as well. And I'm not asking for a tithe or offering. If you want to give a donation, if you think that my podcast is worth it for better equipment, you can always donate to my Cash App, which is the $ MASSEYRR, all lowercase. The $MASSEYRR, everything lowercase. And with that says, shalom, have a good day, and I love you guys.